This is Past Force.
All too often you will hear historians declare the following. This is the most important document in history. The problem with that is that it's just an opinion. You can't really quantify importance. I could tell you, for example, that the death warrant of Charles I is the most important document in British history, and I could provide reasons for that. It set a precedent that nobody was above the law, not even the king. But again, that would just be an opinion. But how do you answer a question like that? How do you say what is the most important document in British history, in French history, in American history, in Angolan history? Well, if you type what is the most important document in British history into Google, it says it's Magna Carta. Although that, again, is not fact, it's just opinion. Because Google is pulling that from the Independent newspaper. The best way is to try and get a kind of consensus, or to try and determine what the general consensus of opinion regarding the question is. What do the general public think it is? So, in order to try and find out, I created a rough kind of survey. The first question was to gauge the level of knowledge. What kind of historical education do the respondents of this survey have? Because an academic consensus is going to be wildly different to, say, a general consensus from the population. An academic consensus may be that it's, I don't know, Tales of Werton by Mr. James Churchill, whilst the public may say that it's this leaflet on Beaumaris Castle. So, I had to gauge that knowledge somehow. So I asked, which of the following history qualifications do you have? None, GCSE or equivalent, A-level or equivalent, undergrad, postgrad. 33% didn't have any qualifications, 44% had a GCSE or equivalent, 10% had an A-level or equivalent, and 10% had some sort of higher education qualification. So we were looking at a general overview of the population here. There were some people who knew very little about history, some people who knew quite a lot. So the answer we were going to get here was going to be a real, general, possibly consensual agreement. Then I wanted to know if people's interest in a particular period would impact the results. So I asked, which of the following periods are you interested in? Prehistoric, Roman Classical, early medieval, later medieval, early modern, Georgian Victorian, 20th century, and other. And yes, it did impact the results slightly, but not a lot. Respondents who were interested in a particular period were more likely to know about the documents from that period, understandably. Confusingly, one person here said Game of Thrones, which isn't a historical period, and they didn't even spell it correctly. So then we get to the documents themselves, and I wanted to know what kind of documents people were aware of. So I chose 10 documents from across British history, from across the whole range, which are generally viewed to have some importance. So I chose the Letter of Honorius from 410 AD, the Beowulf manuscript, the Domesday Book, Magna Carta, the Statute of Rivillon, Shakespeare's First Folio, the Death Warrant of Charles I, the 1707 Act of Union, the Abdication Letter of Edward VIII, and the Good Friday Agreement. One respondent had heard of none of these, and all of the rest had at least heard of Magna Carta, followed by the Domesday Book and the Good Friday Agreement, which only 2 people hadn't heard of. Interestingly, only 2 people had heard of the Statute of Rivillon, which I sort of figured most people wouldn't have heard of it, because it's medieval Welsh history and it's not that well publicised. It's not that well known about, even amongst academics. Welsh history is really obscure, and this kind of proves that. The rest of the documents hovered around the 50% mark, or just under, except for the Letter of Honorius. Only 1 person had heard of it, and even then they didn't think it was important. So then I asked my respondents to rate these documents in terms of how important they thought they were. Not at all, some importance, moderately important, or highly important. All respondents except 2 said that Magna Carta was highly important, and all barring 2, the 2 who hadn't heard of it, incidentally enough, thought that the Good Friday Agreement was highly important. The Domesday Book was split between highly important and some importance, and the Act of Union was the same but skewed towards highly important. The Letter of Honorius was seen as not important, and just over half of people said that the Beowulf manuscript was moderately important. Shakespeare's First Folio, the Death Warrant of Charles I, and the Abdication Letter of Edward VIII were really mixed. The types of responses were all over the board. They were either not important, or highly important, or somewhere in the middle. 1 person said that the Death Warrant of Charles I wasn't important. Try telling that to Charles I. So then I asked, what makes a historical document important? Most people were agreed impact and legacy. Either the impact at the time the document was created, or the impact on today's world. A few people misread the question and talked about the importance of one particular document, but generally it was the same. The impact at the time, the impact it has on today's world. Lastly, I asked, what would you say is the most important document in British history? The responses were really interesting. Somebody said the new £5 note. Somebody else reckoned Guy Fawkes' confession. 1 person said that the World War II announcement was enormously powerful. Somebody else said the Domesday Book. Most of them, however, said the Magna Carta. Even amongst the 10 documents I had chosen, Magna Carta was seen as the most important document in British history. Here's the thing about Magna Carta. Firstly, it's not really one document, it's 4. Magna Carta was reissued about 4 times over a period of about 100 years. Even then, it wasn't seen as important up until the Civil War in the 1640s, when Charles I started thinking he was above the law, and people started using it to say, hold on, this document here, it says that even the king is not above the law. Before then, it wasn't even seen as important. Nobody cared about Magna Carta. Shakespeare, in his play King John, doesn't even mention Magna Carta. 40 years before the Civil War, doesn't mention it. And if it was that important, you'd think he would include a scene where King John would sign the Magna Carta. But no, he doesn't include it. It's only since the Civil War that Magna Carta has been viewed as the most important document in British history. And as we can see, even today, the general consensus is Magna Carta is the most important document in British history. But saying that, in 100 years' time, it might be viewed as something different. It might be, say, the death warrant of Charles I. It might be Tales of Werton by Mr. James Patrick Churchill. It could be something that's not even been written yet. Because here's the problem with the question. You can't quantify importance. The matter of importance is only opinion. And opinion has a tendency to change.
History! It's a thing of the past!
It's a thing of the past.